How did it get there? What happened? There's a new story in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch written by our next guest about what really went on behind the scenes. Stephen Deere, welcome back, Big 550 KTRS.
Hey, thanks for having me.
A lot of legwork on this. It seems like you guys finally were able to obtain a lot of documents that were sort of unavailable before.
Yeah, what happened is the city's the real estate transaction with Northside closed in late December, and when that closed, it made a ton of documents available under the Sunshine Law, and so we had multiple Sunshine requests over the last couple of months, and that's kind of how we put this thing together.
Paul McGee went from being a very well-known suburban developer to buying up parcels of land in the city, to being sued, to being not sued, to being a good guy, to being a bad guy. Paul McGee was at the center of all this. What did we learn from these new documents?
Well, we learned that gosh, we learned a lot. The first thing we learned, the biggest thing, was that when they started negotiating for McKee's land within the NGA footprint, the proposed site for the new campus, that the city was considering moves, a strategy that would in effect wipe McKee out. And from McKee's perspective, he brought this deal, he brought the NGA, he had responded to a blind request for information about potential sites and proposed putting the NGA in North St. Louis. The city had proposed a site in South City. So, I mean, that's kind of the big thing right there. When it started off, it was hostile.
Yeah. So is it safe to say that if Paul McGee doesn't buy up that land and Paul McGee doesn't sort of hold on by a thread numerous times during the downturn, that the NGA site doesn't end up where it is now?
I think that, yeah. I mean, I don't see how you can argue that the NGA isn't coming to North St. Louis without Paul McGee.
Because he was able to take those tiny parcels of land and sort of put them all together for a larger space.
That, and he applied for it. I mean, he submitted. He originally submitted the Pruitt-Igoe site to the federal government for the NGA's new campus. The city didn't do that. He did.
He bought a lot of these properties from the city for pennies, right?
Yeah. He bought them for the sites that within the parcels within the NGA footprint. He purchased for about 1.4 million, and it's I don't know how many acres, 56 acres actually. Yeah, he did, and about half of that 1.4 million, he about half the sites he purchased from the city.
Right. I also find it interesting that they kept him locked up in lawsuits for years because he was this bad developer trying to, keep North St. Louis down, and he wasn't mowing the yards, and we need to sue him. So they kept him in court for years over this land.
Well, it was lawsuits from neighborhood groups and over different things. I mean, some were arguing that. I mean, the big one was the argument that the TIF that he was given, the tax increment financing district, which covered 1,500 acres, was too large for him, and that he didn't have a specific enough plan, and that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. But there were lawsuits about the tax credits he was given, the $43 million tax credits that he obtained. There were multiple legal challenges to this development.
Yeah, really good stuff. Stephen Deere with us, St. Louis Post-Dispatch reporter on the story they have over the weekend of how this NGA mapping agency, which everyone calls a game changer, right? I mean, now everyone's on the same page, right? Everybody loves everybody now.
Yeah, that's right. all the hostilities is kind of gone. But yeah, it's the biggest investment ever in North St. Louis.
Yeah, and you've got Democrats, Republicans, right? You have Claire McCaskill and Blunt all working the levers of Washington, D.C. to help get it here. You had Southern Illinois working to get it from St. Louis, but in the end, it's they've already started on it. But it's an interesting story about how it all came to be. St. Louis Post-Dispatch at your doorstep, at newsstands, and stltoday.com. Stephen, thanks for checking in.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You got it. 7-Eleven here, Big 550, KTRS.